and Doclus, sent by Polycarp into France for his spreading the gospel there, was beaten with staves and bars, and beheaded, and so martyred. Asclepiades, a persecuted confessor, bishop of Antioch. Irenaeus, bishop of Leus, martyr, commended by Tertullian to be the greatest searcher of all kind of learning. He, as his name signifies, a man of peace, composing by his great learning many differences and suppressing many errors, wherewith the church in his time did swarm. Not long after this, Irenaeus flourished. Tertullian, an ecclesiastical writer commended by Vincentius Lyranensis to be the flower of all Latin writers, and one that by his eloquence of style compelled assent, having in it as many sentences as words, and as many victories as sentences. This Tertullian made a singular apology for the Christians, touching every particular false accusation, showing the impossibility and improbability of any truth in them. Roman Emperor Victor. This Victor is reported, though Platina saith the contrary, by Damasus, and the followers of the common chronicles, to die a martyr, but he moved some stir about the time of Easter, which the apostles had left as indifferent, who by reason of their intentiveness on preaching gave no heed to rhymes and days, nor did they bind the church to any ceremonies, saving of strangled things and blood, which of blood seemeth to be given to the church to prevent the scandal the heathen Gentiles laid upon the Christians eating blood, and so to continue only whilst the persecutions of the heathen Gentiles continued also. Pius, Anicetus, Soter, and Eleutherius, having changed Easter Day from the 14th day of the moon in the first month to the next Sunday after, and being opposed by Melito, bishop of Sardis, Egesippus, and Polycarp, sent by the brethren to Asia to Rome to Antitus to confer with him about it, and not agreeing in opinion, the learned men of those times with those now named, keeping charity, left the time of Easter as adiaphoron, a thing indifferent in the church till the time of this Victor. Now this Victor was so violently set upon upholding the Roman determination of his former predecessors as a necessary, that he would excommunicate all bishops and churches of Asia as heretics unless they would be of his opinion. And not Irenaeus restrained him. Had not Irenaeus restrained him. Yet was Irenaeus also Theophilus, bishop of Caesarea, Narcissus, bishop of Jerusalem, Palmus of Pontus, Banchilus of Corinth, of the judgment of Victor, touching keeping Easter upon the Sunday after the 14th of the moon in the first month, for these two reasons. First, because they would differ as much as might be from the Jews. Secondly, because the resurrection of the Lord fell on the same day. On the contrary opinion were diverse bishops in Asia, chiefly Polycrates, bishop of Ephesus, alleging Scripture, the example of some of the apostles, and custom of other fathers, But Irenaeus still took off the edge of sharp contentions, and so the controversy remained free till the time of the Nicene Council, and other doctors of Christian liberty were free till Victor's time, about the year 200. 203, Roman bishop Zephyrus. The two epistles in the first tomb of the councils, fathered upon this Zephyrus, bishop, may justly be suspected to be feigned, and that those and other ordinances spoken of before were invented by some to advance the papacy, and naming them with the names of those fathers, the same we may think of the patents of glass ascribed to the said Zephyrus for that time of his sitting bishop. Some writers make it 8, some 16, some 17 years. The most agree between 17 and 18. Okay, it's 203, Zephyrus. The two epistles in the first tomb of the councils, fathered upon this Zephyrus, bishop, may justly be suspected to be feigned, and that those and other ordinances spoken of before were invented by some to advance the papacy, and naming them with the names of those fathers, the same we may think of the patents of glass ascribed to the said Zephyrus for that time of his sitting bishop, of his fitting bishop. Some writers make it 8, some 16, some 17 years. The most agree between 17 and 18. All right, Roman Emperor Bassianus, King of England. This same Bassianus extends his empire over England between 203 and 214 AD. The Emperor Severus invades England. He casts up a ditch of 130 miles from sea to sea, beginning at Tyne and reaching to the Scottish Sea. He, removing thence to York, was thereby the northern men and Scots besieged and slain. 214. Severus, leaving behind him two sons, Bassianus and Geta. Bassianus slays Geta and governs the empire alone about 6 years, and then was slain of his next successors. 219 AD. 219 year of Christ. Macrinus with his son Diodomenus, various Heliogabalus, Roman emperors. These two, Mac and Diad, having reigned 1 year, were slain of their own people. This Heliogabalus affected Pompey in his life exceedingly, burning balm for oil in his lamps, filling his fish ponds with rose water, wearing apparel of gold and most costly silks, shoes set with precious stones, feeding himself with variety of dishes every second day, furnished with whatsoever was rarest and dearest. He effected too a pompous death, providing, in case his wicked life should make his enemies besiege him, swords of gold, silken ropes, cups of hyacinths to hold poison, pavements of precious stones, wherewith to stab, hang, poison, and brain himself. He affected lust as well as pride, having 600 chariots of bands and harlots to attend him in his progress. He was slain of his soldiers, being an enemy of all honesty, and an advancer only of base ones. 224, year of Christ, Roman Emperor Aurel Alex Severus. This Severus was adopted by Heliogabalus. Being without issue, he was learned and in his actions constantly advised by his Senate. He so hated bribed judges that he would vomit when he saw them, and was ready with his 2 fingers to put out their eyes. He dismissed all idle and needless servants from his court. He favored the Christians, saying of a place where they did meet for good duties, which the cooks and tipplers would have taken from them, it was fitter for God's service than the use of scullions, and so restored it to the Christians. Observed hence that as yet there were no Christian churches in Rome. 224. He put to death Tyrannus with smoke for taking money of people to get for them the emperor's favor, which he, lying, boasted he had at command, the crier proclaiming at his execution, "Smoke he sold, and smoke he is punished with." His mother, Mammia, hearing of Origen's fame, sent for him from Alexandria to hear him, who came to her and the emperor her son. Though he favored the Christians, yet some were martyred in his time, as historians affirm, giving this reason, that by him no proclamation was set forth for the safety of the Christians. Roman Bishop Calixtus. The persons executed under him they reckoned to be Calixtus martyred. Many ordinances of the fast of Ember Week of not accusing bishops and falsely put upon him. 227, Bishop Urbanus. Urbanus martyred. His epistle decretal of church goods, confirmations, and so on may justly be thought to be feigned. Tiburtius and Valerianus, converts of Urbanus, and noblemen of Rome, martyred. Cecilia, wife of Valerianus, a great confirmer of him and his brother Tiburtius, and a means of the baptizing of 400 persons, as the story reports, martyred. Agapetus, of 15 years, who could neither be made to sacrifice to idols, nor be killed with whips, hot water poured upon him, or wild beasts, was by beheading martyred. 236, Roman Bishop Pontianus. The executioner of this Agapetus, named Antiochus, in the executing of this martyr, fell down from his seat crying that his inward bowels burned within him, and so died. Many more, as authors affirm, as well of the Senate and chiefs of Rome as others, were martyred under this emperor, and their heads were hanged over the city gates to terrify others from the profession of Christ. Albeit as touching the time of these forenamed martyrs, I suppose they suffered rather under Maximinus, or Decius than under Alexander. 237, Maximinus. This emperor Maximinus was chosen emperor rather than by the willfulness of the soldiers than the will of the Senate. He caused the 6th persecution, especially against the teachers, hoping that when they were smitten, the sheep would soon be scattered. and therefore it is the more likely that Urbanus and the rest above named in the former persecution suffered rather under this Maximinus than under that Alexander. Origen under this emperor wrote his book De Martyrio. Poncinus, the bishop of Rome, banished. 240, Roman Emperor Gordianus. This Gordianus was a learned and quiet prince and governed with much peace. Pontianus, the bishop of Rome, dies. His epistles decretal touching the hyperbolical dignifying of the clergy probably are feigned. At this time were raised in the church other famous fathers, as Philetus, bishop of Antioch, Zebenus, bishop of Antioch, Ammonius, the schoolmaster of Origen, who wrote diverse books in defense of Christian religion, and continued himself in the profession thereof. Julius Abricanus, who was, as Nicephorus writes, a scholar of Origen and a great writer of histories. Natalium, who had suffered as a good confessor much persecution, but being hired with preferment of being a bishop, and by money via 150 pieces of silver every month, he turned to the sect of Theodocus. But being much afflicted by the Lord, he repenting, returned to the Christian congregation and was received. Roman Bishop Antarius. Eusebius saith that because this Bishop of Rome, Antarius, did cause the lives and deaths of martyrs to be written, that he himself was martyred by Maximinus the judge. Hippolytus, a bishop, a great writer, Eusebius and Jerome, mentioning his books, and a martyr, by being drawn with wild horses through the thickets. Gordianus, emperor, is slain, Philip, emperor, after him. All right, 246, year of Christ. Philippus, the first Christian emperor, and Decius. This Philippus, emperor, took to himself his son Philip, assistant in governing. This Philippus, with his son and his family, being converted by Fabianus and Origen, were baptized. And howsoever Pomponius Lestes writes he was a dissembling prince, this is certain that for religion's sake he and his son were slain by Decius, one of his captains. 250 A.D. Roman Bishop Fabianus. This Decius emperor moves the seventh persecution, which was a most terrible one, because beside Philippus, his Christianity, he had committed his treasure to Fabian the bishop. This Bishop Fabian was a married man, and chosen bishop, as Eusebius reports, by the lighting of a dove upon his head. As he stood among the assembly met to choose a bishop of Rome, he was martyred by Decius. The ordinances of burning the old oil and consecrating new once a year, of not marrying within the 5th degree, and so on, may justly be suspected of feigning. To this Fabian wrote Origen de Orthodoxia Fidei Su, that is, of the righteousness of his faith. Origen, living to this Decius, suffered under him many bans, torments, rackings, and so on for religion. After all which, being brought by the officers to the altar, whereon lay an Ethiop, and commanded to sacrifice to the idol, or else he should have his body defiled by the Ethiop, he chose rather to sacrifice. for which he was excommunicated of the church, and for his calling upon the Christians to carry those boughs which he had in his hand, in honor to Christ, which the heathen used to honor their gods withal, was by the church of Alexandria removed from their communion, and so departed thence for shame to Jewry, where being importuned by the congregation to make some exhortation to the people, after long denial, he stood up and read the verse of the 5th Psalm, and so sat down and wept. What became of him at last is not known, but only that, as Suidas saith, he died and was buried at Tyrus, and ended his life, as Eusebius saith, in great misery and poverty. This Origen's usher in the school at Alexandria was one Heraclius, who for his excellent parts was after master of the school, and afterward bishop of Alexandria, next after Demetrius. After Heraclius succeeded Dionysius Alexandrinus, bishop of Alexandria, as he succeeded him before in the school. This Dionysius writes of Heraclius thus, that is, this canon I received from blessed Heraclius, our Pope. Yet observe that this Heraclius was no bishop of Rome. Nicephorus saith of this persecution that it was so easy to number the sands as the martyrs under this Decius. The more famous were these: Asclepiades, bishop of Antioch, persecuted confessor under Severus, dies a martyr under Decius. Babylas, bishop of Antioch, for not suffering the emperor, having committed a murder to enter into the Christians' temple, was martyred, being buried in the temple of Apollo. He caused the oracle that was there to cease, whereupon his body was taken up again. Babylas, bishop of Nicomedia, martyr. 40 virgins in the city of Antioch, martyrs. Martyrs in Phrygia. Confessors at Babylon carried to Spain to be martyred. Diverse martyred in Cappadocia, diverse martyred in Persidy, many martyred at Alexandria. A soothsayer was a great stirrer up of this persecution, being a great friend to idolatry, by whose means the multitude was so enraged against them that would not sacrifice to their idols, that they stoned Metra, a Christian priest, and dragged Quinta, a godly woman, through the streets and killed her. They went into Christians' houses and took away their goods of price, and burned the rest in the marketplace. Apollonia, a martyr, had her teeth dashed out, and being threatened with a fire made before her to burn her, unless she would commit idolatry, she voluntarily leapt into the fire. Dissension among the persecutors turned persecution for a time from the Christians upon themselves. Revolters, being persuaded to sacrifice to the idols, came trembling, as if they themselves should be sacrificed. A soldier taking part with the Christians against them that rail at them is martyred for the same. A Monarian was tormented for telling the judge she would not yield to his wicked commands for any torments he would inflict, which she accordingly performed, and the judge was ashamed to be overcome of a woman. Knights and warriors standing by the tribunal where the martyrs were condemned, made signs to the fearful, emboldening them to confession and martyrdom. They being espied and about to be questioned, pressed in to the bench, professed Christ and were martyred. Cheraman, a married bishop, fled with his wife in this persecution in the mountain of Arabia and was never seen more. Dionysius, charged by Germanus, bishop, for flying in persecution, cleareth himself, calling God to witness that he regarded not his life, but the soldiers that kept him, leaving him through a fear. By the shrieking of some not far off, he was left alone and escaped. Christophorus, of 12 cubits high, a writer's report, was martyred in this persecution, whether he be that Christopher of whom the speech goes, he carried Christ, and so on, it is uncertain. Abundance in this persecution wandered in mountains and were starved or devoured of beasts. A soldier, outfacing all threats to draw him to idolatry, is by the praetor put into a soft bed in a pleasant garden of lilies and roses, and a beautiful harlot sent into him with embracements, enticing him to adultery. But he bites off his tongue while she was kissing him, and spit it in her face, and rejected her wicked offers. Theodora, virgin, for refusing to sacrifice to idols, was adjudged to the stews, a Christian soldier going thither, as if, as the people hoped, he would have been one of them that would have abused her. Changed his habit for hers, he sending her to escape, and staying there himself to die in her stead, who being condemned, Theodora, to release him, declares herself to be the right party. The praetor, cutting off their hands, burned both him and her. Nicomachus, in his torments, renouncing his Christianity and offering sacrifice to the idols, was, when he was released, taken eftsoons with a wicked spirit, thrown on the ground, that he bit off his tongue and so died. Many more examples there were in this persecution of God's judgment on revolters. Upon these revolters rose first the heresy of Novatus, viz., that revolters for fear of torments might not be reconciled nor admitted to the church, though they repented. This Novatus makes 3 bishops drunk, that they might ordain him bishop of Rome against Cornelius, the then lawful bishop of that see. Upon these 2 bishops of Rome set up together, doth Cyprian so much right of unity in one bishop, and not otherwise is he to be understood as any way to speak for a pope. 255 A.D., Roman bishop, Cornelius. A synod is held at Rome against this upstart bishop Novatus. This Cornelius is highly commended of Cyprian for his worthiness, of Jerome for his eloquence, and for others for his martyrdom. Hence conceive all the trivial decretals to be feigned.